Well, hello everybody. We are still missing our fellow co-host here on the other side, but we'll go ahead and get started. How y'all doing? Here's church chat. it's just me and a camera at the moment. How y'all doing? So here you go. If you have any questions that you've wanted to ask me, and not that guy, I guess. Here I am flying solo. So how y'all doing? Let's get those questions going, either in the chat here on Facebook or on YouTube. I'd be happy to answer any kind of questions that you might have. It is really nice to have two people in this show. I was watching, and we've just been blessed to have Father Ashmore and myself, that we've both been willing to do this and sit down. At the beginning of the pandemic, a good friend of Father Ashmore's, I know, Father Colin Hagany, he was doing kind of an independent show, and he was answering questions and everything. I think it went okay, but it is nice to have someone else to talk with and discuss things. So if you have any questions about what's going on, please get those in the chat. I'm going to go over to, while I am here, and since Father Ashmore never really participates in this part anyway, I'll go over to the camera right off the bat. And I will say hello to Rachel and Rosalie and Laura and Thomas. Hello, how are you today? Sure was fun at Halloween House. It was good to see you, and to watch Coco and to have some fun together. So that was really fun. Looking forward to Halloween. It's just 2 days away now. It's very exciting. So that is coming right up. So hello there. I hope you're doing well, and we'll see you soon. And hello also to the Dryling girls. So I hope that you are having a great day today. So that is it for the camera. Yes, I made reference to, I guess I could just stay on the camera because it's all we got here at the moment. But my sister and I have a custom of getting together. It started off as Christmas House, and we just get together and watch shows and play games. And it all started from my sister when she had moved back into town. She stayed with me for a week up at Our Lady of Unity, maybe even a week and a half. And we just, during Christmas time, we just really had a fun time together. And we had this little room that I had there at Our Lady of Unity in my living room, and it was closed off, and we called it. It reminded us of we're kind of nerdy, I suppose, but it reminded of, and it's a deep cut. It reminded us of the Rudolph and the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Remember that animation movie where the Rudolph and Hermie and Yukon Cornelius, they were all in that little teeny tiny house there, staying on the island of Misfit Toys. It looks always so cozy. So it was all cozy that week. So we usually get together sometime. We call it Christmas House, and we have started a similar thing called Halloween House now. And so we just get together and watch Halloween shows or whatever. So that was nice to keep that tradition going. So what kind of questions might you have for me? I know that Father Ashmore was visiting with some people. That's why he's not quite here yet. I am expecting him to be here eventually, but he had another commitment this morning that it couldn't get out of. So he said he'd be here about 10:15 or so. So we'll just plop him right in as soon as he gets here. So how are you doing here in pandemic world? We have it could get exciting next week. Gosh, let's see here. Are we doing church chat on Wednesday? I think so. That might be a decompress thing there, because we have the elections on Tuesday. That's coming right up, and that could be pretty interesting of what happens then on Wednesday. So I think that we are scheduled for a church chat on Wednesday. We might need to have some chatting about that, I suppose. We never talk about endorsing candidates or anything like that. And people have different reasons for doing different things. So a civil discussion would be acceptable. But also, just so you know, I'm going to do the news brief here probably today. And in the news brief, I kind of talk about what's coming up. And what we're going to be doing this on Tuesday, I'm excited. It was Raffaele Cipriano. It was his idea to have an alternate evening event for election night. So on Tuesday night, we're going to have a music program. Raffaele, and I think, is going to play the piano. Lisa Sweet is going to play violin, I believe. Curtis Mulvanen is going to play the bass, and I think I'm going to play some guitar, maybe a vocalist or two, and just we'll be doing songs by request, church music, things to lift the spirit, lift our souls. That's the idea. So if you get sick and tired of watching whatever is going on Tuesday night, we are providing an alternative. And like we do with many of our things, this will be provided virtually on Facebook and YouTube. So you can tune in here on this very station. You can tune in and watch us here. Or we are also going to have the church available if you want to hear the music live. You can come in and socially distance. The only condition is, however, that there will be no election talk at all on that evening. So it'll be a safe zone, an election-free zone on Tuesday night. But if you would like to tune in to that program Tuesday night, a night of inspirational church music, and hopefully it'll be beautiful, and we can enjoy that. So that'll be Tuesday night. That'll provide an alternate to that. Well, the warm-up show has ended, and the real show may begin now, because look, to great fanfare,
I've arrived.
Here is Father Ashmore, the main host of Fireside Chat.
So, speaking of politics,
we've opened that one up, huh?
I saw a great bumper sticker the other day.
Oh, you did? Do tell.
It said, "Cicero for consul, a prefect for the people." And I thought that was hilarious.
That seems like right up your alley there.
So, vote for Cicero. I would vote for him. He was a very good man.
Okay, very good.
He did end up getting murdered by some of his other friends, but it's one of the tragedies of Roman.
Cicero for what?
Cicero for consul, consul, consul. That would be one of the three positions in Rome during the Republic. They were basically, I believe, my Roman politics aren't particularly strong, but
stronger than mine.
I believe there were three consuls who in charge of the Roman Senate, essentially, and they would be the three people who were somewhat the presidents of the time, and they shared power. And it was eventually taken down to make their own Roman Empire. But prior to that, you would vote for the consul, and what was it? A pragmatist for the people, or something like that, said on the end. Which I wouldn't really say that Cicero was a pragmatist. He was certainly an idealist, but he thought the greatest end of man could be being a statesman. So that's much better than many of our politics today. So Cicero for the people, Cicero for consul.
Very good. We don't normally endorse candidates.
Yes, but I'm personally endorsing Cicero for consul of Rome.
So yes, there we go. You heard it here first, folks. So send your letters to frkent@gshani.org or to the Archbishop complaining that we have endorsed a candidate. We have endorsed Cicero. Does Kansas allow write-in? Do you know?
That would be great. And what would be great, even better, would be I would write in his nickname, Tully, because it was Tullius Cicero, or Cicero Tullius. I'd have to double check how his name was, but people, when they refer to him as Tully. So
okay, very good.
Cicero Tully.
Tully for council. Ah, very good. What else is going on with you, Father Ashmore?
Well, what is going on?
You had a good meeting yesterday, it sounds like, with the youth. Would you like to talk anything about that?
Yeah. So I met up so we have small groups that we're doing, that we try to meet up once a week, once every couple of weeks or so. This group is pretty regular. They're a group of 10th through 12th graders that I'm working with. And we are basically just we have been discussing different theological topics, different things that would be interesting for them. And we've gotten into discussions of basic logic, basic skills in logic, and the fallacies and things
which we have
like
talked
that.
about before on the show.
We have indeed, back during the Fireside Chat days.
Back in those days.
And so
this is when we need to bring up the Ashcam to have you talk here.
This is true. But we had a discussion about one of the church's teachings, and there was some argument about it and this and that. So I decided we need to go back to the fundamentals and do what I would call a basic logic discussion. And so we went through last night, and the students really responded to it well. I had spoken about this previously last week, and I'm continuing that discussion. And one of the things the students said was like, we should learn this in high school. And I was like, yeah, we used to teach this in high school, and then we stopped. But they seem to really enjoy it. Basic logical syllogisms. So, Socrates is all men have bodies. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates has a body. Those sorts of really basic things, and showing how the difference between a sound argument and a merely valid argument. There's a difference between logic that works out but its premises are wrong.
Okay.
Or premises that are right but the logic is wrong.
No.
Those sorts of things. We discussed that last night.
So what's a valid and what's a sound?
So a valid argument is when the logic checks out. So you would see like x equals y, and y equals z, therefore x equals z.
Uh-huh.
That's a valid argument. When you look at it, if you look it out, you could figure out, okay, if those premises are correct, then this would be a true argument no matter what, because the logic in it works out perfectly. That's a valid argument.
Mm-hmm.
But for arguments to be right, they have to be both valid and sound. The premises have to be right.
Right.
So my claim that x equals y, or x equals z, or whatever I'm claiming at that moment, that might be valid logically, but x may not actually equal z. And so you have to...
So all men are fish.
Mm-hmm.
Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is a fish.
Right. That's exactly a perfect example of a valid argument. That is a valid syllogism right there, because the logic works out perfectly. Mm-hmm. But it's not a sound syllogism because the premise is wrong.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so we're using that as examples, and I was showing how the fallacies work out logically,
mm-hmm.
and why they don't work out logically. They're not valid arguments. So one of the fallacies we were discussing was the fallacy of... Where's a good example of one that... begging the question, that's not a good example of this. Red herring. That's a very common fallacy. All men have bodies. Dogs are cute. Therefore, all men should have dogs. That second fallacy has nothing to do with the first fallacy. That second premise has nothing to do with the first premise.
Right.
And it doesn't follow out logically because you just put in new variables. And that would be an example somewhat of a red herring argument. That you might agree that premise is true.
Right. Dogs are cute.
Dogs are cute, but that has nothing to do with that argument. So we see this often in arguments when people are arguing about one thing and they said, oh yeah, but what about this? And you're like, that actually has nothing to do with this argument.
Mm-hmm.
The argument is this moral? Mm-hmm. You're asking a completely different question, but you're making it seem like there's a connection there when there's not actually a connection.
Right.
So that's one example of a red herring.
Good.
Or other things like that.
You also, great new philosopher Ashmore has a new term that you were talking about that was good. I really liked it.
We were discussing last week, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were discussing some elements of church teaching, and one of the students kind of got up in a furor over it all, and suddenly I was getting like, well, what about this, and what about that, and what about this? And so last night I told them, we're doing something that's good, but I want us to stop. There are 2 types of thinking. There are what you could call extensive thinking. And extensive thinking is when you take your particular topic and then you make connections with other things. And that is a really important thing to do. But before you can make those other connections, you have to think intensively. Intensively looks and really tries to break down the argument and sees whether or not it's valid. It's trying to fully understand the particular part before you apply it extensively. And so I said, we are really good as a group of thinking extensively, but we're not really good at thinking intensively yet. And you can't think extensively without doing the intensive because you may be applying things or principles or logic that are as invalid.
Right.
Does that make sense? So
it does. so maybe not entirely, this might be a little bit red herringly, but there's a connection in my brain to, there was a real interest in doing like interreligious dialogue. And that was being taught a lot in the high schools or whatever, about, in our Catholic high schools, about, let's teach about Buddhism, let's teach about Hinduism, and let's teach about this. I know it's not the same exact thing, but it's an extensive look at religion when we haven't gone in and understood Catholicism yet.
Exactly.
And what we should do, like an interreligious dialogue, what true interreligious dialogue is supposed to do, is you're supposed to have people that are really intensively formed in their own religion, so they have a legitimate discussion with someone who is intensively informed in their religion. Because you don't really want half-formed or half-understanding Catholics presenting the faith to someone who is a half-formed Muslim. That's neither one of those are really what the faith is teaching. So let's look at intensively what does Catholicism teach, and a Muslim should be intensively looking at what Islam teaches, and then have that discussion.
Yeah, exactly. And the danger of doing one of those world religions classes before you've done the intensive look is you could easily fall into syncretism.
Right.
They're all teaching the same thing. And that's not fair to Islam. That's not fair to Catholicism. That's not fair to Protestantism. That's not fair to Judaism. It's really when people try to say that religions all teach the same thing, that's really not fair to any of the religions.
No, right.
Often we as Christians get upset about that, but it's not fair to Islam either. Because Islam, people who are Muslim, do not believe what we believe.
Right.
And it's not fair of us to try to claim that in the kind of syncretistic way.
Right. Exactly.
Because then we're pushing our beliefs on them. It's a form of almost cultural imperialism. I'm going to make you believe what I believe, because I'm going to argue around all that. That's just not true.
Right. Right.
But extensive thinking is super important. The reason why you and I can do this is you and I both have the capacity to extensively think, and because of that, we can just come up with topics to jump off on. And that's actually, when we were doing the fireside chats every single day, one of my jobs I considered was when we came to a lull of a conversation, I needed to just make a connection. And so I just made a connection and we ran with it. Because that's how these discussions work.
Right. Sometimes I think, at least for me, I think that idea of doing lots of things broadly, I think that's easier in many ways than going intensively into something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the best pieces of advice I've ever received was think deep, not broad. And this was a professor of mine who was just talking in general, and so this wasn't directed to me, but he was talking to the students. We can often want to get a superficial understanding of many things.
Right.
And it makes us feel accomplished. I can discuss physics, I can discuss theology, I can discuss philosophy, but then you don't have any particular expertise in an area.
Right.
And you don't really have that grasp there, and you don't have the discipline to be able to get that grasp either.
Right.
Because it takes a lot more discipline to study intensively, to study deep. That's why I try not to get too far out of my lane when I study theology. People may laugh at me, and you laugh at me sometimes because you see a lot of books that come along like Thomas on this or Thomas on that, Aquinas on this, Aquinas. But that's because I'm trying to think really deep.
Yeah,
I'm trying to get that there. And then when I go and I read something from Balthazar,
it's like Mufasa. Say it again.
But then I can take those deep thoughts and I can apply them there. And it's just me trying to think deep and not broad.
Right. We were talking about the. I fully recognize. So I am. One of my defining characteristics is I'm lazy.
Oh, I don't know.
And I'm not very good about going intense. And I like to do I like to dabble. I like to try new things. Like to do different things. Right. So. And so, like, we're talking about the music program, and, I play a bunch of different instruments, but my response is, well, how many instruments do you play? I say, well, I play like 5, but none of them very well.
Yeah.
Because, but that's part of the fun for me is because I have no desire to be a professional musician. I was professionally in the arts before, and I have no desire to go back to that. So it's a hobby, so I can kind of do what I want. So if I want to play a little bit of piano and then a little bit of guitar and a little bit of ukulele or whatever, and I don't play any of them really great, but good enough to do what I need to do as a priest and hope and use those tools for various modes of evangelization. That's my main thing. So
yeah, but that also makes sense when it comes to your personality type. You are, I think, a sanguine phlegmatic, if I can judge from the outside.
Okay, right. I don't know what that means.
Okay.
But we've talked about this before, but I don't know these. What are those things called?
The four temperaments, yeah. So there are the four classical temperaments. These were first formulated as part of the body. What are they called? The body liquid or the body fluid?
The body electric.
The body.
That was for you, Kathleen.
There you go.
I sing the body electric.
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about right now. What is that from?
That is from Fame, I think. The music, big musical from the 80s.
Oh.
I think I sing the body electric, and I'll let you continue your thought for a second. I've interrupted, but the body electric. There used to be this show, an exercise show of the body electric, because people were doing like exercise, and that was like the theme song. I sing the body electric, and that I become one with the sun. And this is a way tangent.
It's okay. We're going on it.
But we used to pray for meal prayers together, and we'd all like offer an intention like before we had dinner or whatever, and what's something we pray for or whatever.
Yeah.
And my sister, she was like 3 or 4. She was very cute. She said that I become one with the sun. She used to watch the body electric with my older sister too. So anyway,
that's really funny.
So anyway, that was a very deep cut way tangent, but
Into
that I may become one with the sun. Okay, so carry on. The body, whatever.
Okay, the body fluid theory.
Okay.
We were supposed to have in ancient Greek study of the human person, I suppose, a study of the human body, 4 fluids that would be, and they were essentially called sanguine, phlegmatic, choleric, and melancholic. And there were some, and they were referred to slightly differently, but you can break it down to that. But over the ages, a personality theory has developed out of those, and it was adjusted over time, and now they're actually very, very accurate, even though they date back to this old physical theory that's no longer accepted at all. But the idea of the 4 personality types are very accurate and very helpful. Sanguine so each one has to do with how easily you are aroused emotionally and how long impressions last, essentially, along with how long of reactions take within you. So sanguines are very quickly aroused emotionally in the moment. You get excited quickly, somebody does, or something of that sort. Yeah, exactly. Phlegmatics don't get excited. Well, phlegmatics are pretty level in how they do everything. And then cholerics are very excited, and it's all about the also how long the impression lasts in you. So sanguines, when they get excited very quickly, the impressions don't last very long. Phlegmatics don't get very excited quickly, but the impressions last moderate length, but not super long. Cholerics get excited very rapidly, and the impressions last a long time. And melancholics don't get excited very quickly, but the impressions last a very, very long time. And so there are different body types that are associated with these, but I am sanguine choleric, and so I am pretty happy-go-lucky, but I also got a fire inside of me that if I need to fight, I can, and I feel that's kind of rising up in me sometimes. I think my impression of you is sanguine phlegmatic.
Which means what?
You are very happy-go-lucky, and and you're really not easily angered either. You can be angered.
I can be.
You can. Of course, everybody does.
Right.
But there's not that's not your general status quo.
Right.
Generally,
That's
you're
fair.
more of a peacemaker, or you don't really care where you go necessarily. Let's find if you're arguing with your friends over where to eat, you're just like, probably let's just choose somewhere. Is that accurate?
Sure. Well, I like to know all my options.
Yeah, exactly.
So it always takes me
That's
forever.
a very phlegmatic thing to do
Okay.
too. But that all means you can also come to spiritual and human things about that. Sanguines, you're my main personality type probably, tend to get ourselves involved in lots of things, and we will start things for like 6 weeks and then it'll fall off really quickly. That's a sanguine temperament. You do something and then you do it kind of intensely for a while because you got to arouse really quickly to this topic, and then because something else excites you, you let it go and let it off to the side. And I've got the choleric that helps to balance it out, that helps to keep my sanguine in check.
Okay.
So
now I've got the what is the
phlegmatic? I don't know. You could be something different. That's just like mine.
What does the phlegmatic do to that?
I don't know necessarily. I'd have to look at that more, but that's my guess for you. But I think the four temperaments are actually very helpful, and there's a great spiritual. The spiritual life has, and the spiritual theology has taken them up as part of their own. So there's a great book called Alman Spiritual Theology. It is dry as a bone. It's painful to read, I will just tell you. But it's also one of the seminal texts on the spiritual life. And he goes through the different spiritual qualities of each of the personality types.
Yeah.
And where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, and how you as a person with that could grow in the spiritual life better.
Good. Carly says, any basic recommendations for those four temperaments, book recommendations? And also, what about the Enneagram?
The spiritual, for the temperaments, there's a book called The Temperaments God Gave You. And it was written a few years ago. It's got this terrible cover with this one girl looking, on it. I really hate the cover on it, but it's a very good book.
What's it called again?
The Temperament God Gave You.
The Temperament God Gave You.
And so it basically takes that and puts it in layman's terms. I'm not in any way a fan of the Enneagram. It seems more New Agey than it does founded in any form of science or spiritual tradition. So,
I there she is. I'll pull.
You
that
see
up.
what I'm saying?
It's a little goofy.
It's a goofy.
But I'll pull it up and put it in the.
It's a great book, though.
Okay, so never mind the title. Hey, I never put this up here. What am I doing? Sorry, I forgot. This should go there. And then where'd that go? Oh, dang. Try that again. So there is the cover of...
Like I said. It's a terrible cover. It's a great book, though.
So that's that one. I think that some people really do like the Enneagram. We did it when I was maybe 6th or 7th grade. I found it somewhat helpful. I think that all of those things in this class. I mean, that might be the temperaments might be the best ones. They got the longest pedigree or whatever. But I think all of those have a certain amount of helpfulness, like the Myers-Briggs.
Isn't that coming from like an Eastern spirituality sort
Enneagram?
of thing? Yeah, the Enneagram.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with it. That's whenever I've seen it, it just seemed weirdly New Agey to me.
I agree. I mean, I think it's got that kind of feel. But I know that lots of people have found it to be helpful, and
I don't know anything about it. I'm just saying my initial ones.
Sure. I mean, it has got a weird name, Enneagram, but But I think I've talked about Newman's buckets before, haven't I?
Yeah.
What's the real name for that? Do you know?
I don't know. No.
Okay. It's all Thomas. You're all intensive. But the idea of whatever the thing is called of John Henry Newman, with one bucket with a bunch of holes in it doesn't hold water, but you put it in a bucket with a bunch of holes in it with another bucket with a bunch of holes in it, it holds a little bit more water. You keep putting all those buckets in and you got a good base. I think it's a good analogy. And I think, some of those things, if you're trying to understand yourself, I think the temperaments can tell you something, the Enneagram can tell you something, the INTP can, or the Myers-Briggs can tell you something, the something that we did with the Good Leaders, Good Shepherds, that was at the IC, there were 4 little things, and I think all of those things can be.
That was essentially a 4 temperaments thing.
I was wondering about that. So
I
think
they adjusted it, and so it's not exactly the same, but they're kind of coming off off of that. Mm-hmm.
But if you're trying to figure out yourself and you're trying to figure out how to best talk to another person, I think all of those things are helpful to a certain extent. Like whatever that thing was that I learned in Good Leaders, Good Shepherds, it really helped you because sometimes we talk past each other because we're not speaking the language, or the four loves too. Like, is that the four? That's the four love. No,
you mean the five languages.
5 love languages. I think that's helpful too. I sometimes joke about that. Talking about unity is my love language or whatever, but because I don't think it's actually one of them. But the gifts or the words of affirmation, all those things. I think it's very helpful for couples, right? Because your love language might be receiving gifts, the other person might be words of affirmation. And if you are giving gifts when what they really want is words of affirmation, you're missing speaking the language of love. It's speaking your language, but not speaking the other person's language. So I think all those things can be helpful. So, so we got all on that because of instruments and I like to do different things.
Extensively.
That's right.
We're thinking extensively.
All those different connections there. So, well, that was interesting. Anything else of interest to share? Anything you want to share? Anything from?
Oh, sorry, bad.
From where you were? How was your weekend?
My weekend went well. Nothing too exciting. Here we had our masses. I had another group of high schoolers. And what did I do in the evening? Oh, we met with the girls for Sunday night too.
Oh, good.
So
good.
They talked about devotion to Blessed Virgin Mary, and also just sainthood in general. So it looks like the 9th grade girls group, along with their moms, are going to be doing the 33 days Morning Glory consecration of Blessed Virgin Mary.
Wonderful.
So we'll be getting that started soon-ish. I have to double check on that.
I should redo that because I did that for New Year's Day, which would be coming up pretty soon.
Yeah.
I should reconsecrate.
Yeah, I reconsecrate every year on September 15th, and so I use.
You're mentioning that.
Yeah, I use, but that's Our Lady of Sorrows and 7 Sorrows of the Blessed Virgin Mary on that day. I didn't choose that necessarily, but it was just a good day when I first did it, and so I've come to really appreciate that feast day because of it. But I use the Louis de Montfort's version every year, and I first did it with the 33 Days of Morning Glory. So I think it's a great intro book.
Yeah. I should redo that. That was several years ago that I did that. So 14, 15, 16, something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's a great practice. It's a great way to grow closer to the Blessed Virgin Mary. So Michael Gately wrote 33 Days of Morning Glory, and he does a great job of really explaining the Mariology, the theology of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And so if you've ever been curious, like, why do we make a big deal about the Blessed Virgin Mary, I'd really suggest trying out this 33 Days of Morning Glory. It's a book with, I guess, probably 33 chapters. And each chapter is 1 or 2 pages long.
Right.
It just goes through one aspect of the Blessed Virgin Mary, her life, devotion to her, the saints have been devoted to her, so that anybody can understand why we so highly prize her.
Yeah, that's super. I guess I still could make Immaculate Conception, couldn't I?
Yeah, you'd have to.
Close.
I think you could.
If not, maybe Guadalupe.
Oh, I think you could.
Yeah. And then there's also, speaking of many days, you've got your meeting with this Exodus 9. Is it 90?
Yeah, Exodus 90. So that's a group of high school boys. I've known some of these boys since 2014 because when I was at Ascension, they were in probably 6th or 7th or 8th grade, or maybe even earlier than that now, when I think about it. They were somewhere around 6th, 7th grade. And I was over at St. James one day, and one of the boys asked me, hey, would you be willing to be our chaplain for Exodus 90? And I said, sure. So I meet with a group of probably 6 or 7 high school boys, and that is a spiritual program that has a lot of asceticism as part of it to help grow self-mastery and also grow a spiritual life among men. It's a very good program. It's an intense program.
Right.
The spiritual asceticism they take on is asceticism. They fast on Wednesdays and Fridays, don't eat meat on Wednesdays and Fridays, and no snacks. And no snacks for a teenage boy is a lot.
It is a lot.
It is. I've been to hear some of them mention the lack of snacks is really humorous. But they do that. They take cold showers as part of it to grow in that self-mastery of being able to say no to something they would want, because everybody wants a warm shower to be able to say it.
Yes.
To be able to say for 90 days, no, I'm going to deny myself a warm shower. There's other practices that are part of it, but they also try to pray every single day for 30 minutes to an hour, I think, and pray the rosary along with going to mass. So it's a very, very good program. I would suggest it to any man who is wanting to grow in self-mastery. If you have a group that's forming or something like that, I think it could be very beneficial.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And it's challenging.
Right.
It is. And it's 90 days. And the reason why they chose 90 days was that's a way, the 90 days is a good timeline for creating new habits. If you can do something for 90 days, you can continue it for the rest of your life, is what some of the brain science was saying, apparently. So,
no, it's good, and it's really for boys particularly, because it's kind of a masculine spirituality, right?
Yeah, it is. It is for men. It's when you read it, it screams young men trying to be spiritual together. It's what it's a male fraternity.
Right, right. Mm-hmm. Which is great. I think it's. I mean, I mock it a little bit because it is very ascetical and like. What? No cold, no warm showers. What is going on with this? But yes, I mean, I know that. Especially in today's age, our teenage boys are getting onslaughted with all kinds of stuff that we didn't have to deal with.
Yeah.
Especially me, but and you also. Things have just escalated so much with access to stuff on internet and whatever.
Cell phones constantly.
Yeah. So to have this discipline and you need an intensive response to an intensive world that they're living in.
Exactly. And self-mastery is hard. That's
yes. So you're quoting the catechism right there.
Yeah, exactly. Self-mastery is difficult. And these forms of asceticism are not necessarily punishing yourself. Mm-hmm. And if you're punishing yourself, you're doing it really wrong.
Right.
Because it's not some form of masochism or anything like that.
Right.
It is saying no so that you can say yes, and you can say no to the wrong things.
Right.
So when you think about it, I was struck by this when I visited the Holy Land. We went and we saw one area, and I'd have to say Philip. We went and saw some Roman, not temple, but it was a Roman building that was just utterly luxurious. You could tell it was utterly luxurious. There was marble everywhere in insane age, and this is where Paul spoke at one point and defended himself, and then went off to Greece. So I don't remember where it is, like Philip Alakui or something like that. But I was just struck by what they considered so luxurious as being relatively common for us now.
Yeah.
That we live in utter luxury.
Yeah.
This couch is this couch would be something that kings would sit on.
Yes.
We're so used to having the perfect temperature. I can tell when it's 69 versus 68 or 70 degrees out. We live in utter luxury.
Right.
And to think that it doesn't have an effect on us spiritually is naive. Mm-hmm. Really naive. We need to be able to deny ourselves in order to be able to say yes to those things that are most important. And so that's what asceticism is about. It's about growing that self-mastery of not living in constant comfort in order to grow in the capacity to say yes to Jesus. So
it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Good
so
stuff.
It's really good for these young boys, I think especially, and young men. Mm-hmm. And I would very highly suggest it. If anybody here wants to start an Exodus 90 group or something, I would be more than happy to assist you in that too.
It's awesome. Mm-hmm. Good stuff. All right. Well, I think that pretty much closes out our church chat for today. So, yeah.
There we are.
That's it.
C'est fini.
So are we on for, how's next Wednesday look for you?
Let me take a look.
Because we can tell the people if we're going to be there.
I should be on.
Okay, so it could be a very interesting episode next Wednesday.
Oh, that's true.
So
I'll be sleeping.
Well, you have mass, I think, in the morning.
It's true. I'll be going back to bed.
So we'll be on for Wednesday morning unless something weird changes, but we're planning on 10 o'clock next Wednesday. And then don't forget, we'll do, if you want an election alternative, there will be music in the church and on your Facebook and your YouTube. If you get tired of watching whatever else is going on Tuesday night, we will provide an alternative. That's our kind of been our tagline. Good Shepherd is here for you in the midst of the storm. We want to make sure that we are still there for you. So if you need some lifting of your spirits on Tuesday night, we are here for you. So
and if you want to do that, just turn off everything and read.
Well, there is that too. So
I'm just suggesting it. Find a good novel and just get sucked into it and be like, oh yeah, I forgot we're in a democracy. What's going on tonight? And then at the end, go to bed.
Yeah. Well, as Mike Schurzlik is saying in that rosary meditation, he's saying it over and over again. Turn off the news. Don't stop putting your whole faith in politics and everything. So good stuff. Good reminders. So
all right.
So we'll see you next week.
God bless.
Yes, indeed. Let me turn on our theme song again, Michigan Greens.